Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are from Group 12. We would like to present our topic about international English and the globalization of English. So the first topic we would like to present is international English. So the first material would like to present by Galih. Galih, time is yours.
Okay, international English, Australian English have several characteristics like usual in unstressed syllable, where in RP the form will be for example, naked, honest, and busy. Two is use non-rhotic verb, like for example, form. Number three is intervocalita, for example, CD, weather. Number four is use of E where in RPE is more common. For example, very, many, and CD. And the last one is the U vowel has more lip rounding. For example, put with more rounding lips.
Okay, next I will continue the presentation. So we'll explain about Indian English. So before we know that English is an official second language in India, but Indian English has difference with British English. So this is the difference of Indian English. For the first one is a formation of plurals of mesh noun. So a mesh noun is a noun that in standard English is not countable, which cannot be made plural by the simple addition of an S inflection. But in Indian, wait a minute. But in Indian English, using pluralism mesh noun by the addition as is a common thing. For example, he gathered all the woods. For the second one, the meaning of some modal verbs. So modal verbs are a type of auxiliary verb. They always occur with the main verb and provide information that the main verb doesn't. So in example, Indian English, this mistake may be please be corrected. So may, the modal verb may interpret by speaker or writer as a being of polite form. But in British English, this mistake should be corrected. In the British English, the modal do not change the form, but in Indian English, the formal model be different with the British English. So in Indian English, the modal verb is changed. So in third, use of present tense as opposed to present perfect with duration process. So this is the example. In Indian English, I am here since 2 o'clock, but in British English, I have been since 2 o'clock. So in Indian English, use a present tense, but in British English, use a present perfect tense. So the last one, lack of subject or verb inversion in direct question. So for example, in Indian English, the verb what this is made from, but in British English, what is this made from? Okay, thank you. That's all from me, and will be continued by my friends.
Okay, my name is Feby with the last three suitable number 060. So I will continue the pigeon and crows on the West African coast. So the relationship between pigeon and crows. So pidgin varieties of English developed along the West African coast as a result of contact between the native inhabitants and European settlers trading. Then, what is pidgin? Pidgin is a linguistic communication that's comprised of component of two or more other language and is used for communication among people. Then a contact language is illustrates one of the key features of a pidgin. Other key features of pidgin are simplification, mixing, and reduction. Pidgin is both a substrate language and a superstrate language. The substrate usually the local vernacular provide the grammatical structure, while the superstrate provide the majority of the lexis of the pidgin. And this is the pronoun system of Cameroon pidgin. Then just give example of typical of pidgin in the vocabulary of Cameroon pidgin. We utilize lexi not only from English but also from the local vernacular that from the substrate. Then what is Creole? Creole is a language that was at first a pidgin but has transformed and become a first language. If a situation arises where a pidgin becomes the first language of a speech community as a result of a children learning the pidgin as their mother language. Okay, the next one will be the continued by Dewi.
Okay, thank you, Feby. My name is Dewi with the live studio number 058, and I will continue the presentation about the globalization of English. The first material is attitudes toward global English. So the first issue to consider in this discussion of the globalization of English is the attitudes that people have towards English as a global lingua franca. Pennycook, 2001, summarizes some of the debate in this area. For example, it is not necessarily in the case that the spread of English globally is seen as a good thing. So the spread of English globally provides numerous advantages and disadvantages. The advantages for native speaker of British Standard English, they will enjoy all of the advantages of English becoming a global language, but not for an international speaker of international variety of English that is not recognized as standard, or people who do not speak English at all. From this latter perspective, the development of English into a global language is perhaps not as a valid. Further argument against the global development of English is provided by Pennycook at 2001. English is a language of imperialism, and that is global spread threatens the survival of many of the world's lesser-known languages. Their argument is that the prestigious position that English occupies results in people wanting to learn and use English in order to reap the economic advantages that it brings, and this inevitably leads to the downgrading of local vernacular and can result in the dying out of languages. And the next argument by Crystal at 2000, it provides argument as to why we should be concerned by this, because language are repositories of history. So lose a language, it means lose history of the speaker of that language, and language also provides a means of expressing individual identity, and diversity is an essential part of our humanity. So experiencing difference allow us to understand ourselves better and to empathize with other viewpoints. The next material will be explained by my friend.
Okay, thank you, Dewi. So we'll continue. So words in English. However, English are not a corruption of British norm, but complex and developed varieties in their own right. So according to Crystal, the development of global English and all the varieties that constitute this increase the need for standard forms in order for speakers of world Englishes to communicate with one another. So, and according to Crystal 2001, 58. Interesting about the future of global English is that speakers are like to have to master at least two standard forms. The standard is Word Standard Print English or YSPE and Word Standard Spoken English YSSE. So YSPE is already exists in so far as Standard English is the common form used worldwide for writing in English, but YSSE not yet emerged, but it doesn't it does crystal in according crystal surmises that it is like to avoid such features as originally beside idioms and complex poem cluster and to involve at least some degree of simplification. Okay. Next material will explained by Dewi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vera. Now I will continue the presentation about fragmentation or fusion. So what form of English to take in the future is fragment. Fragment first is to develop into numerous sub-languages that are not mutually intelligible, and the second one is to develop to the extent where there are very few differences between international varieties of English. Next argument from Crystal at 2003 consider these possibilities and admits that with our current levels of knowledge about new varieties of English, it is difficult to accurately predict the likelihood of fragmentation happening. We also need to consider the notion of fragmentation and fusion as mutually exclusive. English exists in numerous different forms, national varieties, regional varieties, social varieties, etc. And it is also the case that individuals use language differently according to particular circumstances. The language we use at work, at the classroom may be very different from the language we use when we out with friends. We expect the globalization of English lead to the fusion of certain varieties while at the same time retaining the diversity associated with particular local varieties of the language that are especially important for conveying identity. The argument from Burrich and Mulder consider this possibility in their discussion of the related concept of conformity and diversity. So conformity refers to labeling differences in linguistic terms, and diversity is the opposite. Linguistic diversification is a reaction against conformity, pointing out how linguistic diversity emphasizes the connection between the language and identity. And the last one is developing particular localized varieties of English enables the assertion or reassertion or individual identities as important a function of languages as communication. So that's all our presentation about international English and the globalization of English. Thank you so much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.